Okay, we're going to do the second half of the coding with variables chapter for VB.NET. And what we're going to start with is talking about these variables, talking about kind of where they reside in memory and how long they sit there. Okay. And where they reside or who can use it is known as the scope of the variable, and the lifetime indicates how long is it in the memory. All right. And this is determined where you declare that in your code. Okay, so where in your code do you say it? So it's not like some special keyword or something you put in there. Not like, in other languages you could say like global or something like that. It doesn't do it that way. It's all about where do you declare your variable. So at a procedure level, these variables are accessible only within the sub-procedure or function. Okay, so when you have like your private sub, blah, 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 and then end sub, only within there are procedure scope variables accessible. And as soon as you hit, an end sub or exit sub or return statement, as soon as you're done running that sub procedure or function, the variables go away or the values go away. Okay. You can't if you have one function and you have a second function, you cannot in here ask for the value of something that was determined in here. Okay. Once this ends, that variable gets blown up. It's gone. On the other hand, class scope is, at the very top, you have like class, FRM main. Okay. I'm just going to write main. And then at the very bottom, I think it's end class. I don't even know. I don't even look, right? And inside you have your sub. You have sub 1 and you have sub 2. And class scope variables are declared right here, right after the class declaration, before any sub procedures. And they're accessible in all of the functions and sub procedures inside that class. They can all go back up there and get that value. All right. So if you have a variable that's holding some value that needs to be retained either between runs of the same function, like every time you click btn calculate, maybe we need to keep track of something. And a prime example of this is a counter, right? If you have some function or some form that does like, let's say it's a mortgage calculation function. So you have those things and then you have your button. Okay. And you do some input, you click the button. Maybe there's a variable that says, this is how many times we ran this function. And you take that value and you increment it by 1. And then every time you click the button, you increment that value by 1 again. If that were a procedure scope variable, it would always just be 1, right? Because every time that ends, it would get blown up. And then you run it again, you do the calculations, you add 1 to nothing, you get 1, and then you blow it up. But making it a class scope, you run it the first time, it's 1. You run it the second time, it's 2, because that variable does not get blown up at the end of the sub procedure or function. All right, and we talked about procedure level. So let's look at page 91. I'm opening up commission solution. So chapter 3, commission solution, procedure level. Let's open that up. Okay. We have it open here. And open the code view. So I'm just going to click on the form and hit F7. There's the code view. Let's see. The 3 option statements are already done for us. Exit already done for us. Darn, that was an easy one. I would have liked to do that one. And that's it. So we need to do the rest of this. And what we have is sales commission, and the commission is based on whether you click on 8% or 10%. Got it. So locate BTN rate 10 click procedure. So 10. Enter the 2 dim statements, the try, parse, and the 2 assignments is shown in figure 322. We are going to declare dec sales as decimal and declare dec com 10 as decimal. And then convert txt sales.text to a decimal. So I'm going to use the decimal class. I'm going to try parse. And what am I parsing? txt sales.text. Remember, txt sales is this thing. If I look at the properties of this thing, name is txt sales. And what the user typed into this box is the text property of this object. So I'm looking at the text property of that object. And what I want to do is put it into deck sales. Okay. Then multiply the value by 0.1d and store that back into deccom10. So deccom10 equals dec sales times 0.1. And it's giving me an error here because this 0.1, let's see here, trying to convert a double to a decimal. So I want to make that D. Say this is a decimal. And finally, I'm going to take that and write it back into LBL commission.text, which LBL commission is this box. It's a label. And the value of it is empty right now. We're going to set the value of it to be deccom10.toString, and it's going to be currency with 2 decimal places. All right, so if we run this, I could put in 120 as the sales, and deccom10 gives me 12%. All right, 8 we haven't programmed yet, but 10 works. And then do the same thing for 8. All right, so I'm going to take these lines and copy it because more efficient that way. I'm going to do this. And by the way, so this is wet code, W-E-T. What we're doing here, call this wet code. So wet stands for write everything twice. All right, versus what's the opposite of wet? Dry. So dry code is don't repeat yourself. And by doing all this copy paste, like this line, or more importantly, this line, the decimal.tryparse is the same thing, right? We repeated ourselves. So we would, in future classes, figure out how we're going to do this without repeating ourselves. Okay. All right, let me just look through here. All right, so that was everything in this one, right? So we just declared some procedure level variables. We took those variables, we put it into, we parsed the input, because remember, whatever the user types on their keyboard is a string. So we took that string and we converted it into a decimal. We did some multiplication, and then we took that decimal, we converted that to a string as currency and put it back into the label. All right, so that was page 91. All right, so there was some like ugly work that we did on that, right? I'm not a fan of this, okay? Because we really shouldn't be using like constant numbers down here. They should be defined as a constant towards the top of our sub procedure. And so that's what this is. All right. So constants are very much like variables, only they're constant. They can, when you declare a constant, you must give it a value, and that value cannot change. Okay. So once that application runs, that's what the value is, and it has the same lifetime as the procedure in which they are declared. So we're back in same function here, or same calculator. Sorry, let me make this a little bit bigger. I can. There we go. All right, and am I supposed to be opening something else up? Let me just look real quick. Nope, we're going to use the same one. Okay, so I'm going to declare a constant. And when we declare a variable, it's dim. For a constant, it's const. Okay, and we still have a prefix. But then what we do is we specify the rest of it is in capital letters. So const decorate 10 as decimal is equal to 0.1, and error we're getting here is 0.1 is a double, and we're trying to put that in a decimal. So I'm going to put a D after it to say, hey, treat that as a decimal. All right, and it's been stored in decorate 10. And then instead of using 0.1 here, we say decorate 10. Okay. And we can then do the same thing with 8. So I'm going to do a little copy paste. And use that constant down in my code. All right, save that. You can run it if you want, but that is using constants. Now let's talk about class level variables. So they're declared immediately after the public class statement. So if I look here, public class FRM main, so that's on line 9. Remember, this 0 references isn't really a line number. It's between lines 9 and 10. And it's not even code. I can't even click on that, right? And then line 10, it's private sub. So in between here, that's where I would declare my my class level variables. And then once those are declared, they can be used in any of the procedures. Which, that's nice, but more importantly, they retain their values and they remain in memory until the application ends. All right. So let's use some class level variables. And in this case, we're going to open up total scores. So look, let me show you something. If you're in Windows Explorer and we go total scores class level, if I double click on this, don't do it, but if I did, what happens is another instance of Visual Studio loads. Okay. Eventually, you're going to have like 8 instances of Visual Studio loaded, and your computer's not going to like you very much. So a little trick is, as long as you're in code view, okay, this does not work in design view, but if you're in code view and then you've got that solution in front that you want to open, you can take that, drag it into code view, and it will open up that other solution. Also, what's nice about this, it's much faster opening things this way because you don't have to spin up another version of the of Visual Studio. Okay, so looking at this form, I hit F7. I'm going to, what does this do? So this, you put in a score and it tells you how many total scores there are. Is it how many total scores there are, or what is the total? It's the total of the scores. Okay. So within public class FRM main, I want private, so we don't say dim here. We specify the whether this property of this class is public or private, DBL total as double. Right, so what private means is this variable, I guess we'll call it, what are we calling it here? A class level variable. This class level variable is only accessible within this class. If you're outside of this class, if you have another class that's interacting with this one, you cannot access this, okay? So that's what private is versus public. And so when we look at this, when you add a click, it's going to take the value, whatever the user entered. We need to convert it to a double and then add it to the class level variable. Okay, so I need the procedure level variable to store the score just temporarily. So dim dbl score as double, and then there's like a lot going on here. Accumulate the scores. So we need to take that we take the user's input, which is txt score.text, and store it in DBL score. And you know what? They put this here. I think it's better up here. And so my cursor's on this line, okay, and I want to move this line up. Just by holding down Alt and hitting the up arrow, I'm able to move that line up. All right, so let's learn our keyboard shortcuts. All right, now I'm going to take DBL total. Now, what is DBL total? It's this right here, okay? And you can see that as soon as I write it, if my cursor's in here, that's highlighted, and DBL total is also highlighted. So DBL total equals DBL total plus DBL score. So we're taking what the previous value was, we're adding the new value, and we're storing it back into that class level variable. And then LBL total dot text is equal to DBL total dot toString. All right, converted to a string. Now when I run this, I can say my score is 12, and then 37, and then 56, and then 2. Right? And as you run it, it's increasing this. And remember, when you click this add to total, it runs this bit right here. And then as soon as it hits end sub, any variables declared in here are destroyed. But because DBL total is a class level variable, it's declared outside of that class, it's still alive until the whole class is destroyed. And how is the class destroyed? By hitting exit. Okay? So, excellent. We did that. Check, did page 94. All right, so static variables, all right, is declared just like a procedure level variable, but it's extended lifetime. Okay, only the lifetime is extended. It's going to remain in memory. It holds its value. It's just like so it acts like a class level variable in terms of memory, but it acts like a procedure level variable in terms of scope. Okay, it can only be used in that procedure in which it is declared. And to declare these, you use the static keyword. So instead of const, instead of dim, we use static, but you name it the same as a variable naming with camel case. So the book wants us to open up another application and work on it, but let's just modify this one. All right, we're going to modify this instead of using a class level variable to use a static variable. So we're not using this. I'm going to control KC to comment that out. And then I have a procedure level variable for storing the score. And I also want a static variable for accumulating the scores. So I'm going to say static DBL total as bubble. And then my red squiggly should go away. Notice I don't give this a value because this is going to run every time someone clicks on the add button. It runs this code. All right. And if we gave this a value in here, it would just be overriding that value. So let's run this again. Score 56 and score 6. So it's adding it up. Okay. We're not using a class level. We're using a procedure level. What's better? It's not really what's better. It's which one. When you're coding, you want your variables to be tightly scoped. Okay, meaning DBL total is only used in this private sub. It's not used in any other sub procedure. So making it a class level variable is making it too wide open, willy-nilly, insecure, right? You're saying by declaring this as a static in this sub procedure, only this sub procedure can access this particular variable. So think about, how tightly can you declare your variables? You want to make it as minimum, permissions as possible so that your application can still run. All right, so we used a static variable. Um, again, going back to constants, or going back to class level things, we can also have class level constants. We just preface that with private const. So if we go to, let's see here, class level constants, we are going to open up circle solution. So a little bit of alt tabs there to get these windows open, drag this over. All right, here's our circle solution right here. And what does that look like? Circle solution, radius and area. It's kind of silly that we're making this a class class level const, but whatever, we'll make them happy. Private const dbl pi as double equal 3.14159. Okay, and then calculate and display the circle's area. So what we're bringing in is a radius. So I'm going to say dim dbl radius as double, and double dot triparse, I'm taking in txt radius dot text. I'm storing it back into double radius. And we should know that area of a circle equals pi. Oh, so check this out. If you hold down Windows and hit the semicolon key, you can bring up your emoji keyboard. And it has 3 sections. All right, you have all your emojis. The second section are, I don't know what you call these things, but it's the shrug guy, table flip guy, all that stuff. Okay, and the third one is special symbols. And somewhere in here, within special symbols, I'm sure is pi. Okay, that took way too long to find. So under symbols, go to the last of your different pages here, and then pi is 1, 2, 3. So row 4 and 4 in. There you go. A equals pi r. Oh boy, now we got a square too. Okay, pi a equals pi r squared. Okay, took way too long to come up with making that look fancy, but that is what the area calculator calculation is. So we need something to store that value. So I'm going to say dbl area as double, and then dbl area is equal to a equals pi, so dbl pi times dbl radius squared. And then I'm going to take lbl area dot text is equal to dbl area to string a number with 2 decimal places. All right, let's run this, see what it does. I have a circle with an area of 3. I'm sorry, radius of 3, area is 28. I go to 4, area is 50.27. So great, that's how you would use private constants. I will tell you one other thing though. Instead of doing it this way, what I would do this. So instead of using dbl pi, actually we have the math class available to us, and as part of the math class we have math.pi. Okay, so our value here that we came up with for pi, 3.14159, is probably close enough, but math.pi is, I mean, look at that. It's giving us many more digits to pi, and it's something that we don't have to declare then. We can just use this as part of the math class. Okay, so there are these classes that are always available to us. Math is one of them, and as we do things, we can take advantage of that. But for this example, we're using dbl pi. Okay, let's do a little mini quiz. We're going to do a mini quiz? Nah. Moving on. Creating a professional looking interface. All right, so let's go back to the circle solution. And I'm going to run it again. And I'm going to type 2 in here and hit calculate. It says 12.57. Now I'm going to change this to 25. And the area still says 12.57. All right. Now, clearly that's not right. I didn't click calculate again. But if you look at this, like, oh, if you just like, walked in right now and looked over my shoulder and saw this, you'd be like, oh, your program's wrong. Because if you have a radius of 25, the area is not 12.57. Okay. Definitely something that we want to fix there. So what we're going to do is we're going to say whenever this text changes, we want to clear this label. All right. So to do that, I have the text input box selected. You see it right here. I selected TXT radius. And let me reset my windows because I see that I'm a little different here. I want to make sure that we're looking at the same thing. Okay. Yours probably looks a little bit more like this now. So I have the radius text box selected, TXT radius. And what I'm looking at, this third button says, here's all the properties for that box. Great. The fourth one, the lightning bolt, says, here's all the events for that box. And the one that's selected is the most common one, TXT changed. And if I can enter any sub-procedure name here, or I can choose an existing one, or I can double click on the empty box right next to it. And it gives me a sub-procedure properly named that handles when the text is changed in TXT radius. All right, I'm going to delete that and do that one more time. So I have radius selected. Over here, instead of looking at the properties, I want to look at the events. So I'm still in the properties window, but I click over to the events tab. And TXT changed, right next to it, I just double click and it gives me that event procedure. Okay. And what do I want to happen when the text is changed in TXT radius? I want to take LBL area.text and I want to clear it. Okay. So I'm going to set it to an empty string. You could also do equals empty string, or I think you can do, I thought there was a way you can like clear it with a function or a function. But anyway, either of these work. I'm going to stick with this string.empty because that's what the book is using for us. All right, so now when I run this thing, radius of 5, hit calculate. Oh, I'm sorry, radius of 2. I'm like, why was that such a big number? We did radius 2 last time. And then 25, oh, look, that's empty. So as soon as I make a change to this box, it empties, and I have to hit calculate again. All right. These little things take your application to just a whole nother level. I know it's not super difficult to do, but it really makes your application kind of stand out. Okay. So let's do one more thing here. Let's run our application again. Put in 2, hit calculate. Put in 25, it clears that. Hit calculate again, gives us a big number. Let's tab over into radius. And notice when I tab into radius, it puts the cursor like at the end. Okay. And if I start typing again, like if I type 37, it doesn't overwrite that. It adds it to the end of that. All right. So what we want to do is when the focus is put on this field, I want it to be highlighted so I can just type 37 and then click calculate. All right. So what we want to look for on that box is the enter event. So when you enter this box, so I just double clicked right next to it, I want to take TXT radius and I want to select everything that's in that box. All right, I'm not deleting it or anything. I'm just selecting it. So now when we run this thing, I hit 2, go to calculate, hit enter. I hit tab. As soon as I'm in here, now I can type 25, enter, 37, enter. Okay, so as soon as I enter that box, it selects it. So That's something that you're going to be doing pretty much from here on forward. Whenever you have any text boxes, you're going to be coding them so that when the user enters them, all the text is selected in them. All right, so just from here on forward, you're going to be doing that. And then whenever you change a value of a text box, you clear any output labels. Okay, so we did that. And that's it. You've now understood variable scope, which is going to be super important as we move forward. And at the same time, you're making your applications a little bit more professional in design. So with that, give me the attendance assignment, 3 things that you learned from this lecture or questions that you may have. And then from here, let's see, you can go on and do, well, both assignments. You previously were able to do the rectangle assignment, but now you can also do Chopkins. And if you have any questions with those, the YouTube video solutions are linked there as well. All right, then. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.